All right, are we on? Oh my goodness, I think I'm live. This is pretty cool. Technology, amazing. Hey, I'm Kathy Koch of Celebrate Kids, and I am looking forward to being at your convention in April. Will you be there? Is anyone there? I think you all had a chance to vote on a topic for me to discuss, and the winner was change, how to help kids change. But I'm open to just about anything, I think. I might change my mind later. What about those? Do you think those things are funny hanging from the ceiling behind me? Does it look like there's something growing out of my head? I probably should have moved those. Those are angels from Sweden. Finland, actually, Finland. I've traveled to 30 countries, and I often collect nativities and meaningful things. And I was with a friend, and these little angels just captivated me. So they're hanging from the ceiling fan in my office. And perhaps the next time I do something like this, I'll have to move them so they're not a distraction if I move my head. There they are. All right. Questions about change. What do you want to know? What do you want to know? I can talk about what makes change challenging. We can talk about how to make it more permanent. I can tell you what really irritates kids because I've asked them. That can be really fun. So what do you think? Huh. I wonder if someone's there listening and they're just not asking questions yet. I see one person. Oh, there's a comment. Hi, Ashley. Oh, that's cool. Thanks. So you're Facebook friends with me already, or you follow me on Celebrate Kids. And so I think I'm up to 122 nativity scenes. I received several for Christmas, which was beautiful and unexpected. And I'm going to share those probably at the beginning of next December. So up behind me, the very colorful one is from Senegal, West Africa. And the material there, and you can also see a quilt on another wall, and that's also from Senegal. And some of the material in the quilt is also used to dress Mary, Joseph, and the wise men. So that's kind of fun. I'm trying to think what else is up there. There's one of children displaying children pretending to be Mary, Joseph, and the shepherds, just like many of us did when we were kids. So welcome, Sydney. Welcome, Cassandra. Welcome, Shansi. Glad you guys are here. We're just talking about my nativities that are up behind me. Some of you who follow me on Facebook know that I own over 120 of them. They're displayed year-round. I have about 60 of them, I believe, here in my office, and the rest are at home year-round. I can't bear to put them away. I've traveled to 30 countries and started to purchase them just for myself, and then people started giving them to me as gifts, which is really fun. But we're supposed to be talking about the change process. What would you guys like to know about how to help your kids change? Would you have some specific questions? I can talk about what makes it hard. I can talk about what I know frustrates them. I can talk about how to make it more likely that change will be permanent. But I'd love questions. I guess I could just ramble on. Let me just start with a couple of ideas about why change is hard. But I'm watching here, and so you guys, this is all about you and meeting your needs. So feel free to jump in with questions. But let me say that if you are raising older children who are already using technology, then one of the reasons that I think that change has become more challenging for kids is that technology makes them think that everything should be easy. We've got copy and paste, we've got spell check. Oh, praise God! We've got a phone that has an alarm and a clock and a calculator and a dictionary and so many other things. And so they can believe, because of technology's influence upon them, that everything should be easy. I actually had a child, a 9-year-old, say to me just recently, Dr. Kathy, when you text and the words finish for you, I wish when I took a spelling test that would happen. Oh my goodness. And I kind of laughed and I said, maybe you're of the generation that will invent a pen that can read your mind. That's amazing. And as we talked about it, what he was really saying was, I don't have to work at this. I want everything to just be easy. And so change, let's be honest, if you got to change an attitude, a character, quality, a belief, a behavior from unhealthy to healthy, unwise to wise, inaccurate to accurate, whatever it is, you got to work at it. You got to stay in the valley for a little bit. And that's a challenge for kids. So that is the first little insight I'll share about why it might be harder for you than it was before to get your kids to be willing to change. But you guys have questions yet? I see that one of the administrators has posted that we are going to be offering you a free shipping code to our Celebrate Kids shopping cart. So if you are interested in my books or CDs or DVDs or posters or things, you can go to our shopping cart after we're on Facebook here and purchase something, and it'll be as if you're live in the room with me. You won't have to pay shipping. So I hope that's a blessing. All right, good. I've got some questions here. Thanks for doing that. Oh yeah, I love Karen. Karen, thanks for being brave. The discipline of being disciplined in parenting. What if you know you're the problem? How do you get better for them? Yeah, that's the first step, right? To humble ourselves and to prioritize them and to say, hey, you guys, you matter so much to me that I'm going to do the heavy lifting and I'm going to do the hard work. And so if we've gotten apathetic, if we've developed a critical spirit, if we've developed, laziness, because seriously, you guys, you're my heroes. I can't wait to meet you at the convention where I can look you in the eye and say, you're my heroes. I think it's amazing what you all do day after day to love on your kids. So let's be honest. And let's make sure we're being mentored. Let's make sure that we're submitting to people who are maybe we need people who have homeschooled longer than we have, who can be in the trenches with us so that we can reach out to. Maybe we need to, come to conventions, certainly. And I'm proud of you for being here on the live call. Certainly reading books or books on CD or tape or Audible, going to blogs and chat rooms and really doing the quick thing, like I write blogs that you can probably read in 3 to 5 minutes because I know you're all busy and I know there's a lot of other people like me that do that. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I also want to say that a lot of kids tell me, now Karen, I don't know how old your kids are, but a lot of kids tell me that they get confused when we change, right? Because parenting is a habit with a history. And homeschooling adds to the weight of the habit and of the history. Nothing wrong with that. It just is what it is. And so if you've been parenting for a while in a particular rhythm and you have ways that you do your morning routine, you have ways that you respond to laziness. Maybe when you see one kid being impatient with a sibling, you have a way of responding. And maybe you're going to decide tonight you want to make a change. And so you start to behave differently. And the kids are like, what? What happened to my mom? And so sometimes I think that what's really beneficial to help them understand that we're trying to grow up is that we would have that conversation where we would sit down with the family. Ideally, the husband, father is involved if you guys are not single parenting, and you sit down as a couple and you say, hey, we're going to make some changes here because we are going to own what is our responsibility and we want you to own what is your responsibility. And yeah, just checking out my phone there. So I think if you tell them what you want to try to do, it can be beneficial because then they're going to play the game with us and they won't feel so blindsided. So it makes sense. So that's the first nugget I might share with you. Let me, and Kieran, ask another question if you want, but let me jump to Sydney. Sydney, you've got 4 little kids. Wow, that's so cool. 3, 5, 7, and 9. How can my husband and I effectively implement changes within the household across different ages? I don't know. Oh my goodness, that's a great question. It's hard, right? Because your 9-year-old and your 7-year-old, they've lived longer, they have more experience with the blessings of boundaries or with the way that you keep your supplies or whatever. Little ones are different. So I think it's so important for us to remember the developmental ages and stages of our kids and to not expect 5-year-olds to behave like 9-year-olds. We want them to because we want our lives to be easier and we want them, and they want to, right? The 5-year-old loves the 7 and the 9-year-old siblings and wants to be like them and then gets frustrated when he or she can't behave in that way. So I think we guard their hearts from disappointment by making sure that our expectations for our kids are appropriate for their ages and stages, and that we don't expect a second, third, and fourth kid to necessarily catch on quicker. Sometimes that happens, praise God, but it doesn't always, and to force it, I think, can be really awkward. So be realistic, maybe one change at a time. If you want to make a morning routine change or a bedtime change, or maybe you're going to institute some family devotions that are different and you're going to do a different style. The same week that you institute a new family devotion, I don't think you should be doing anything else that's major, because you'll get a headache, it won't work, you'll think that you're a failure, and it won't work for them either. So that's a thing that I would share related to that. I hope that's a blessing to you as well. You know, for those of you who don't know it, as you keep listening and asking questions, so grateful that you're here. If you don't know this, I don't have any kids. I'm here telling you what to do with yours. And it's kind of fun. I mean, I hope I haven't just blown all credibility. My joke is that Jesus wasn't married and he wasn't a father, but he had a lot of wisdom to share with husbands, wives, and parents. And I'm not equating myself with him at all. I'm simply saying that we can get experience and education through a variety of ways. That's why I admire you so much. You know, I won't talk at convention. I don't talk on radio. I won't talk tonight about the things that I don't feel I have a right to talk about, right? I don't deal with bedtime battles and diaper changes and homework hassles, if you will. And you guys don't have homework in that way if they're going off to school, but I know you still obviously work at home all the time. But you have a right to know that I have wisdom that I've acquired through my education and through interviewing people and writing the books I write and doing what I've done for 26 years. But you have a right to know that I admire you greatly, and I'll stay away from the categories that I don't think I have a right to talk with you about. Does that make sense to you? So I hope that you'll ask questions that I can help you with. It would be an honor to do so. Waiting for other input here. Glad that several of you are here with us tonight. I'm just looking down at some notes while I wait for another question. Negativity is another thing that makes change really hard. So if any of you, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that comment. Love your transparency. And Ashley, how kind of you. You're so good at telling us what to do. That's really kind. I work hard at what I do, and I do pay attention to families and culture and a variety of circumstances. So I pray constantly, we all do at Celebrate Kids, that we'll stay relevant for you, because I think what you're doing in a digital age is really, really challenging. So I'm just so honored to be a part of what we're going to be doing in Kansas City in just a few short weeks. I thought I'd mention while I wait for another question that negativity is another thing that I know is defeating. None of us, even mature adults, we don't change well when we're criticized. We are not going to step up to the plate and really apply ourselves with effort when we feel like there's nothing that we do right. And so I would encourage you that if you feel like you're frustrated because your kids aren't growing and changing, like I totally respect that. You're doing the very best you know how to do. But if you've developed a critical spirit, if you're looking for what they're doing wrong before you're looking for what they're doing right, it's probably not going to work. Kids have to know their strengths in order to overcome challenge, right? How do you, ladies and gentlemen, how do you overcome your weaknesses? Well, you do it by knowing what you do well that you can apply to the things that are challenging, right? So if I've got an issue that I want to work on, I need to know what I'm good at that I can apply to that area so that I can make progress. So if your kids only know what they're not good at, you're so impatient. You know, there you go again, being careless. You know, if all that you were talking about during our day is there you go again, then they're going to believe that they can't improve, and then why bother trying? Kids tell me all the time, oh, Dr. Kathy, I'd rather not try than try and fail. That hurts more. I know I disappoint my mom when I don't try, but when I try and I fail, I disappoint myself also, and it hurts too much. So maybe that's really important for some of you, just to look for what they're doing right, to be optimistic, to talk about the good, and help them understand how they can take a strength and apply it to a weakness. I think that could really help. Karen, thanks for asking a question. Let me read it. Helping those who hate hard work. One of mine, an 8-year-old, sighs, but will always do the job or schoolwork, but clearly doesn't like it. And a 4-year-old who just states that he hates it and it becomes a battle. Oh, love her. People like her comment. That means that you understand, that you're in the same boat with some of your kids. Hey, you know what? Praise God that you have an 8-year-old who doesn't enjoy it but does it. Because obedience is right. That's how Christ-like character is developed, by doing the hard things while we're in the valley experiences. So, praise God. For the 4-year-old, I'm a big believer in the written record. I don't know if this will make sense to you as applicable to this question, but I don't believe he hates everything. Now, he could really be in a negative space where he's fearful, he's angry, maybe he's feeling some competition with the 8-year-old, and so he never feels like he's going to mount up to that. So I'm just going to, give in and say, hey, this is really hard. So if he hates everything, that's certainly, you have a right to be very discouraged, and certainly pray. What I have found working with kids and working with a lot of families is that usually kids don't hate everything. And so I want to encourage you to do a written record, write down the time of day, the subject matter, what was going on before that caused the anger outburst, that caused the I hate it and I'm not going to do it. Sometimes it's hunger and they're 4 and they don't know how to communicate that. Sometimes it's fatigue and they don't want to admit that. You might discover, like some parents have, that he's only going to throw a fit and say he hates it and battle because he wants to distract you because he's scared. Or maybe his sister or brother just did something amazing and he is feeling like, man, I can't compete. And so he throws a fit again to take the pressure off of himself. And I've met with many parents who, praise God, have found within just a few days of the written record that it's only at 11 in the morning and it's a sugar low and he needs a little snack perhaps. Or it might be just after a sibling read out loud and it really sounded good and you were very affirming, and there's the 4-year-old listening in thinking, I'll never be able to do that. So the written record can help. Time of day, who were they with? Was it spelling, math, science, history, Bible, outdoor play, indoor play? Was it bricks? Was it books? You might find something that then gives you an avenue toward a conversation that would be empowering to him. I also want to say to you what I say in a lot of my live seminars, and that is that it's disrespectful for him to argue with you, debate with you, and battle with you. It's disrespectful. It is sin. I believe in calling sin. Now, young kids, they don't have a lot of self-control. They don't have a lot of experience yet. They don't have a lot of vocabulary to express some of the hurts that they're feeling. And so we have to have compassion for them and not judge all of that. But I do want to say that to you, and this is where you and perhaps your husband, if he's involved, and I hope he is, have a conversation with him and say, why would you think that we would want life to be so hard? We love you. We don't want everything to be hard. Now, if it's hard, we want you to step up and grow up and do your job, however you want to call that. But we love you. If we're going to challenge you, it's because you learn a lot when you're challenged. But trust us. And, I sometimes say to kids, play the game called school. When I do programs with children at homeschool conventions or schools and churches, I say, school is not supposed to be easy. Look up school in a dictionary. It does not say an easy, fun place. And that's true if they're schooling at home or schooling somewhere else. And so we need to stand our ground and say to our kids who are complaining, who lied to you and said you would like everything? So I don't know. That I play with kids a little bit with that. I get them to see that their expectation is maybe what's getting them into trouble. So maybe that camp there a little bit and see, Karen, if that's a blessing to you. Catherine is asking a question. This looks like this may be relevant for a lot of you as well. I struggle with finding the line between extending grace and enforcing discipline. Don't we all? With my 8-year-old and 4-year-old. And I then end up with disobedient children. How can I better distinguish when I need to let them off the hook? The first thing I think of is know your children And if your children are capable of doing something, if there is evidence that they're capable, all right, they did it yesterday. They made their bed without complaining yesterday. They took their plate to the sink on Sunday without, dropping everything. They remembered to pick up one toy before getting on another toy, whatever the issue may be. They put away spelling before they began math. If you have evidence that they're capable of obedience, and then they slip and slide back and they don't, there's more of a willful choice there than if they haven't provided you with the evidence that they're capable. So that's what I would do. I think if they're capable and lazy, you call them on that. If they're capable but self-centered, because it's almost always going to be a character trait, right? This is what we all have to look for, you guys. Our being, man, I hope I'm not dumping too much on you. We're human beings, not human doings. Our being causes our doing. Everything that you hear from me or see in me tonight, and if you hang out with me at the convention, I'm so looking forward to being there. You'll get to know me, and you'll get to know me, the being, the Kathy Cook, and my essence, my heart shows up in my action. The scripture speaks of this, that your heart is where the treasure lies. The heart is where things give birth. Things are birthed within the heart. And so what you need to be looking for with your kids is their attitude and their character, and make sure that you're not just disciplining, if you will, or extending grace or punishment and rewards, whatever you guys call those. I prefer the words positive and negative consequences rather than reward and punishment, and ask me if you want to know why. But whatever you're doing with that, I just did a parenthetical phrase and I have no idea where I was going. Pay attention to the being and not just the doing. If you're talking about the behavior you observe, and you never talk with them about the heart that's choosing the behavior, you will not get as much change that will last. Does that make sense? If you only talk about the external behavior that you observe, and you never talk with them about the heart that decided, then their changes won't be as permanent. Now that's a mouthful, you guys, that's a mouthful, but that's a biblical concept, and that's where we at Celebrate Kids camp a lot. Beliefs cause behavior, and beliefs are a matter of the heart, the mind, the soul, the spirit, and they show up. What do you think? Making sense? Oh my goodness. I feel like I'm rambling. But I'm enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying it. Have you ever thought about this? I'm just going to talk and keep asking questions, you guys. If you've never thought of this, this is a really significant truth I'm going to share with you. And that is that the word change means exchange. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, there's a huge book. Can you see it? Let me get out. See that book? That is a second edition Webster's Dictionary from 1906. It's one of my favorite possessions. I really enjoy looking up words in that book and then looking them up in a current dictionary. And oh my goodness, we have redefined a lot of words. But so I enjoy words. I've got other dictionaries here I won't bother to show you. But when I looked at the word change a number of years ago, it was really a significant thing with me. And that is that change means exchange. Change means exchange. And Shansi, I see your question. I'll be there in just a second. So if you want to help your kids change, they need to know what to change out of and change into. So just jot yourself a note if you're taking notes tonight, or just put it up here. Change means exchange. So they need to exchange one attitude for another. They need to change one behavior for another. They need to change one belief for another. They need to change character qualities one for another, from impatience to patience, from self-centered to other-centered, from rude to kind, from aggressive to gentle, from careless to careful, from too quick to slow down. And what I've discovered in my work and in the writing that I do is that we need to talk with our children about both what we want them to take off and what we want them to put on. And that helps change take place. And that requires that we observe our children longer. What's going on? What's the situation? What's the matter of the heart, mind? And then we talk about both the negative and the positive. A lot of kids tell me that they know what to take off. Like you'll say, you're so rude, or stop being impatient, or stop picking on your sister, or we tend to maybe communicate what not to do, and they really may not know what to do. They really may not. Now, they may be playing you, and this is why you've got to know your kids and call them to account if you feel like they're manipulating you. But often I think that's true. In other cases, there might be some kids who know what to put on, like you want them to be kind to their grandmother, but they don't understand what it is that they're doing that gets in the way. Okay? Man, thanks for listening. And Ashley, thanks for the affirmation there. Let me jump up to this question from a friend. How do you deal with preschool kids who just want attention all the time, even negative attention? I struggle with trying to get my normal household work done and can't play 24/7 with them. But then I find myself spending more time putting out fires from them if they didn't get enough attention, if that makes sense. It makes total sense. How many of you understand that dilemma? There are a lot of kids where negative attention is better than being ignored. And so if you do that written record, and if you believe that they're whining and complaining and demanding, like they pet you like you're a dog, like they're demanding from you something, look to see when is that happening. Often it'll be, you were just busy on the phone, or you just put something in the crock pot and they really felt ignored for 7 whole minutes, But to a kid, that might be a really long, kind of a scary time. So if you can figure that out, you're going to have, again, another way that you can talk with them about their behavior and their choices. A lot of moms and dads have found that it's effective to pay close attention to them prior to doing that kind of thing. So let's say that you have to talk to somebody you're on a committee with. You've got a local homeschool co-op, and you've got a meeting coming up, and you need to touch base with a gal on the phone, and the best time is 10 o'clock in the morning. Maybe you need to touch base with your 2 or 3 kids before the phone call and do a jigsaw puzzle real quick, or color with your daughter, or play a quick game maybe with your son, or read a story to all 3 of your kids, but spend time with them so that when you say, mommy needs her own time now, they're going to have an easier time handling that. So that's one suggestion. You've probably tried that. See if you can get them to help you with as much of the stuff around the house as possible. I also want to say, and I hope that you'll receive this well, please have fair expectations for housework. I'm certainly a fan of a neat home, and I'm not asking you to have clutter everywhere and a mess everywhere and dirty clothes and dirty dishes. Certainly you guys know that that's not what I'm advocating for. However, I want to say to you that you guys know this. Your kids are only this age for a season. You've chosen to home educate your kids. You're very busy. You've got a commitment. You're studying yourself so that you're prepared in season and out to help your kids. And a lot of you are married, and so you've got the marriage relationship to be devoted to as well. So one of the things that you'll hear me say at the convention is that if I were in your home, and I'm not stopping by, so don't worry, but if I were there, I would want to see games on the table, a jigsaw puzzle in the northeast corner of the living room on a card table. I would want to see coloring books and crayons, Sudoku books, Frisbees at the back door. I would want to see games and toys and stuff that makes it look like children live there. If your home doesn't have any evidence that children live there, then it doesn't feel to your kids like it's their home. And it doesn't feel like it's their safe place. Some of you know I've written a book about technology. I'll be in a movie with Kirk Cameron next week. And one of the things we talk about in that movie about technology is you have to give kids alternatives because they are addicted. Even little kids are addicted. And so I want you to maybe, for this friend who wrote in through one of our members, maybe you're spending more time on housework while the kids are awake than is appropriate or necessary. Have you guys heard that cleaning your house while your children is awake is like brushing your teeth while you're eating an Oreo cookie? Right? So maybe have expectations that are different. I'm going to move on, but we could talk about that all day. So Sydney, so my kids are different beings. Yes, they are. We're all unique miracles created in the image of God. Is it better to have the same discipline and rewards for them across the board, or to tailor those based on the child? Wow. It's best to tailor them. It's realistic that you won't be able to do that all the time. I think it depends on how many kids you have as well. The best the best consequence, whether it's a positive consequence because you want to thank them for a job well done, or a negative consequence because they did not do something well and you need to point that out to them, whether it's a positive or a negative, the research says that you'll help them change best when those consequences are related to the crime. So that's the most important way to tailor the way that you're helping your kids change. So if they refuse to eat, they go to bed hungry. If they refuse to wear a sweater, like maybe it's going to get cool. I don't know where you guys live, but you're out and you say to your kids, hey, by the time we get home later, it's going to be cool. You need to grab a sweater. Well, I don't want to. Then grab a coat. I don't want to. Grab a sweatshirt. I don't want to. And if you choose not to battle that, and you choose to let them suffer the consequences of their disobedience, which is what it is, it's a choice. By the way, all obedience and all disobedience starts with choice. And all choice is rooted in a belief system. All right? So if you allow that kid to go somewhere without a sweater, jacket, or sweatshirt, now I'm not advocating that because I'm not saying your kid should get sick and that you're going to have to deal with a sick kid 48 hours later. However, if your child is now uncomfortable at the soccer game watching the sibling complaining, I'm so cold, you need to look at your child and say, I told you, I asked you to grab something of your choice and you refused. Sweetheart, we ask you to do things that are good for you, all right? So that's an example of a consequence that fits the crime. Now, when she gets home, you might want to deal with it differently. I hope that's a relevant example. Let me reread this because I'm rambling. Better to have the same discipline rewards for them across the board. The way that you reward, the way that you punish, if you like that word, also depends on the age and the stage of the kid. Again, willful disobedience versus a choice to not obey. I would do that very differently. I'm a chatty Cathy. I was a chatty Cathy when I was a very, very young child. Now people pay me to talk, which is a great thing. I don't do what I do to get paid, but it's amazing. And I ask kids all the time, how many of you want my job? But the thing is that my parents needed to deal with my chatty Cathy-ness. Those of us who are talkative, we can manipulate well with words. We can gossip, tease, name call, always have the last word, demand attention through the spoken word. And I had a brother, and they were parenting him too, and they didn't want to ignore him. And there were times when they would have to call me to account for a behavior that was totally irrelevant from what my brother would have done in the same circumstances. So because we're different and we disobey and we obey differently, I think you are going to have to tailor. Man, I hope that rambling made some sense to you, Sydney. Amy, tips for helping 9 and 12-year-old boys stay focused on their school to-do list amidst the distractions of home. Yeah, wow. Many kids, you probably know this, many kids think they're capable of multitasking and multi-attention, and they're really not. Many of them are distracted because they have so much to think about, not just so much to look at and do. So sometimes you're in a brain dump, sometimes before the math class starts, maybe before you sit them down to watch a DVD that's part of your science program, maybe before you finish reading a chapter from the health curriculum that you guys have chosen to use, you let them do a brain dump. What's on your mind right now? What are we having for dinner? Well, why do you need to know? I was just wondering, right? Why do they need to know? They know you're going to feed them. But, get it. So sometimes the brain dump is a good idea. Sometimes they tell you, sometimes they tell the siblings, sometimes they write it down just to get it out of the head. That really works well for me. If I'm working on a blog post, I leave tomorrow for an event where I'm going to help raise money for a pregnancy resource center. So during part of my day today, I was working on that and praying over that. At the same time, I was getting ready for this and other things. I sometimes had to really clear my head from one task or one agenda item, if you will, so that I could focus. So does that make sense? Do a brain dump, talk with them. Sometimes, putting them in a cardboard box, if you will. I actually know people who use refrigerator boxes and do that. You can ask the kids to pretend that they're in a space that doesn't have availability to the rest of the room. Some kids are morning kids, some kids are afternoon kids. So some of us, I do not concentrate very well in the morning. I know that about myself. So I patterned my to-do list accordingly. Maybe that's something you can watch for, especially because they're 9 and 12. You've parented them long enough to maybe know that. I'm going to move on in case there's other questions here, but that's, well, let me say this, Amy, ask them. A lot of kids tell me, Dr. Kathy, my parents never asked me for help. They never asked me what I think would work. Now, you don't want to lose your authority. You are the authority. However, again, one of the blessings of homeschooling is the unity and the community that you have as a family. And so, to sit them down and say, hey, I did this live Facebook thing last night with this lady that's going to be at the convention. And I asked her about if there were things I could do to help you guys with your distraction, because it's frustrating. It takes you longer to do your work than it should. I end up getting discouraged, and then I'm critical, and then I'm unhappy, and it's a mess. So I was just wondering, guys, what do you think would work? Kids tell me that they feel like we have the rule book and they're playing the game. Isn't that an interesting analogy? Like, would you guys want to play football if you didn't know the rules? No, we'd be dead. So maybe that's relevant. Appreciate that. Sydney, you're asking, I feel like we often react to our kids instead of being proactive so that we don't face some of the issues to begin with. Yeah, it's so right. I bet everybody on this call would agree with that. Hey, Angel, welcome to the call. So Sydney, I feel like we often react to our kids instead of being proactive. Yeah, if you can predict that, they're not going to like this assignment, get ready, right? If you can predict that they're going to get it done in a hurry, they're not going to want to dig in and persevere because laziness is set in with creative writing or math work, then, you talk about it differently before you ever assign it. And again, have grace for yourself. We're human. If you're tired, if you're hungry, if you're concerned about an illness in your family, I could go on and on, right? We're human beings. And so we are going to react sometimes because life isn't fair. And we forgot to get a red, pen out for a project. And then we get angry at ourselves and stuff. So, yeah, I appreciate your question. I love your heart. If we can be proactive to prevent, if we can apologize after overreacting, that'll go a far, far way. All right? Yeah, if there's something specific you wanted to ask within that, feel free to do so. Cassandra, what to do when you have a recurring problem that the consequences aren't working for? You've tried various things and none seem to get the change. Okay. Wow. Such a good question, you guys. So let me back up and say something I maybe should have said a few minutes ago, but here it is. I was asked tonight to talk about change, and that's a lot of your questions are about discipline and behavior, and that's fine, and about how to change them. Here's the thing, you guys. Please don't think that you change children by having rewards and punishments or positive and negative consequences. Those things can motivate a redirection. They can help kids grow into themselves, if you will. But here's what we've got to do. We have to teach them how to change. One of the themes of our ministry at Celebrate Kids is that we cannot yell at them and tell them, we must teach them. And this takes, on our part as the adults, more of an effort, more of a concentrated discernment. So, there's a recurring problem and the consequences aren't working. What is the recurring problem and what are they doing wrong and what do they need to be taught about how to do it right? That's that. And if you guys are, please write that down. Kids tell me all the time, Dr. Kathy, they're like, Dr. Kathy lady, my mommy, she yells and she tells and she thinks she's taught me, but she has never taught me. Now, please, you guys, hear my heart. There's no one on this call who's intended that to be the case. Some of you have thought that you have taught, but you really haven't. You explained. Did you explain? Did you describe? Did you teach cause-effect relationship? Did you show them a negative way of doing it and a positive way of doing it? Again, change means exchange. So you need to exchange the bad for the good, the inaccurate for the accurate, the incomplete for the complete, the biased for the not biased. They have to know what to take off. Ephesians 4:22 through 24, you guys. Ephesians 4:22 says, take off your old self, which is corrupted. Ephesians 4:24 says, put on your new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. And the 23rd verse says, renew your mind. And you renew the mind in the holy word of God. All right, now that's a mouthful, and that's a whole 1-hour seminar. But what I want you to understand is that if consequences aren't working, if rewards aren't working, yeah, maybe the consequence isn't right. Maybe it's not enough of a painful punishment. Maybe it's not related to the crime, and so the kids aren't connecting mom and dad's decision to the difficulty that they're having. But sometimes we have not done the heavy lifting of teaching, where we've explained to them, this thing you're doing, this attitude you have, this belief you have, this character quality that you've developed, it is not right. And we're going to help you take it off and replace it with something that's God honoring. And we're going to teach you how to do it. And that means we mentor, we instruct, we correct, we reward, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I can help further in that, I would love to, but I hope that makes sense. Teach before we assume that it's just a problem with the consequence. My gut is that for a lot of us listening, it's not that we need a better consequence. What we need is more time to teach them obedience. Do they know how to be successful at what we've asked them to do? Now, if you think they do know, and they're making a willfully disobedient choice to tease a sister, to not follow through on their tasks, then there are consequences that are going to work better for some kids than others. And this is where, you have to know your kids and know where's their pain point. Oh, here's an idea too. And then, Angel, I'll get to your question. There is some evidence that for some kids, it's better to give them something and threaten to take it away. As an example, you give them 10 quarters. Now, I'm not saying this is going to work for all of you, but you've got a kid, maybe he's lying, okay? Maybe he's lying, maybe he's lying. He's not taking responsibility, and he's always saying it's not my fault. So you give him 10 quarters, and you tell him that every time he is caught lying, you take a quarter away. And at the end of the week or at the end of 3 days, whatever you think is realistic, he gets to keep the money and spend it on something for himself. Again, this won't work for all of you, but for some of you it may. And there's some research that says that once he has it in his possession, he doesn't want to lose it. And that may motivate change rather than every time you don't lie, I'll give you a quarter. Do you see the difference? He starts out with money in a box. He gets to keep it unless he lies. Doesn't have to be money. It can be, coupons for, a walk in the park with dad. It can be coupons. Maybe you give him 10 coupons that would be equivalent to a vanity plate for his bike. Spring is coming. Maybe he got a new bike for Christmas, and there's going to be a bike license plate that says cool kid. And you know that it's available at the store, and you know what it costs, and you give him enough coupons to buy that. And you tell him, if you lie and I catch you lying, then I'm taking those coupons away and you won't be able to buy that. That can motivate change, right? So I hope that helps. Again, there's so much here. Angel, would you explain what you desire them to do looks like, or better yet, model it? Would you explain? Yes. Would I explain what you desire them to do, what it looks like, or would I model it? Yes. This is what kindness toward a sister looks like and feels like. I might model that. I might play act it. I may find a children's book that has a great example of a kid, behaving rightly. And that might work. I might show a TV show or a movie, a clip of a movie that might be a good example of somebody behaving in the way that I want you to behave. Because sometimes kids can't see it in themselves, but they'll see it in somebody else. So I would explain it. I might model it. I might, and as soon as I see a child, if I've taught well, if your daughter is, behaving in a prideful way, maybe your child is very, very talented, but is really not compassionate toward kids who aren't. And so co-op is really challenging, or, the ballet class is really hard because your daughter thinks I'm the best and everybody else here is an idiot. If you feel that and you model that and you teach that and you talk about proper behavior and you observe class and you see the first time she crosses the line and she behaves in an arrogant manner, you've got to grab her gently and help her understand that, sweetheart, this is an example of what we were talking about last night. because a lot of kids, they don't connect. Does that make sense to you? So if you can, maybe use a camera on your phone, take a pic, like maybe it's not appropriate to go into the ballet class, and call her out. But maybe you're in the room watching, you take a picture of her in the moment when you see that body language that says, "You are so slow." And later that night, you show her that picture, say, "Sweetheart, this is what we were talking about. You come across as judgmental. This is why they don't want to play with you." So I hope that's helpful. Yeah, wow. I'm just looking here. So much fun. I hope it's making sense to you. Yeah. You can't over talk to this generation, right? They're young kids. It's not inappropriate to say they're the Twitter generation, even though they're too young to be on Twitter. We cannot over lecture our kids. They will not listen long. So sound bites broken up into teachable moments is always going to be best. Karen is asking, thoughts on motivating a struggling learner who struggles because of disabilities. How to affirm them, but explain their issues and motivate them despite the fact that it's very hard. Oh, Karen, praise God, you're homeschooling. Motivation is it's really tricky, isn't it? Motivation comes from the same word as motive. So what's a motive your child has to get better? I think sometimes having an audience is key. I used to teach second graders in a public school forever ago, before, this is like 35 years ago. I can't believe I'm that old, but anyway, one advantage of a classroom, if you will, is papers on the wall, or even something as silly as my students learning how to write a thank you note and taking it down to the school secretary. And then there's an audience for their work. So I want to encourage you to come up with audiences for your children's work. It can be, mom, dad, and siblings, of course, grandma and grandpa, and Kathy. It can also be people in a co-op, if you guys are in a co-op program. But what about, writing a letter and sending it to the mayor of your city, writing a letter and dropping it off at a police station, learning how to color, in a variety of ways, and taking it somewhere, to a nursing home on the corner, and saying, "Hey, would you like to display this? Is there somebody that's lonely? And we would love to display this in that person's room." And the advantage of all of that is, Karen, that your child would be motivated to do well because there's a purpose in what he or she is doing beyond learning. Ideally, learning is the great purpose, and that's enough. But in reality, all of us really do like it when somebody notices what we're doing, right? Not just teacher with the red pen, not mommy with the red pen, but I'm going to do this to be purposeful. Like I tell kids all the time, when I write, like when I'm writing myself a note, and the note is just for me, I don't care about my penmanship and my spelling. But if I'm writing a note for somebody else, it better be spelled well, and I better write so that it's legible, right? So audience drives excellence. Does that make sense? And so, Karen, I don't know what the issues are here for your kids, but sometimes having an audience motivates desire for excellence, and purpose drives competence. We teach at Celebrate Kids that there are 5 core needs that have to be met, and one of them is purpose, which drives competence. If I don't know why I'm doing something, I don't need to do it well. That I could use an hour to unpack, but when I know why I'm alive, I'm willing to develop my excellence. And so giving your son or daughter new purposes might be enough to motivate. Affirm them. Share old work. Sometimes save old papers. Sometimes if you can't save it all, take a picture of an old art piece. Take an audio recording of a piano song. Keep an old math paper. For instance, a lot of kids don't realize that they're getting faster, right? Like math, there's so many problems on the page, right? And they still feel like this is hard and I'm not good at this. What they don't know is that a month ago, there were 20 problems on the page. Now there's 25 problems on the page. So in reality, they have sped up. right? They don't recognize that, early in the year, their spelling words were one syllable. Now they're doing two-syllable words. They don't get that necessarily. So sometimes, Karen, it can be really an encouragement for them to see evidence that they've improved by looking at what their old handwriting was like or what an old paper looked like. Okay, I hope that's a blessing. Let me move on to Sydney. When it comes to teaching our children the proper behavior, how many times should we repeat the teaching over before we start trying other methods to create change? Great question. For example, should I tell my 9-year-old 24 times over how he should respond to an annoying sister, or teach him 6 times and then move on if it's not getting it? Wow. The same conversation probably isn't going to work. Now, this is where, again, is he being willfully disobedient? Then it's an issue of motivation and some negative consequences for his choices. Remember the concept that all behavior is a choice. He needs to know that you chose to annoy your sister. No, I didn't know. You chose to take her toy away to get her mad. No, I didn't know. It was your choice. So use your language really carefully. If he's being willfully disobedient and you catch him in the middle of that, then probably separation. A really good consequence when kids don't play well together is they don't get to play well together. And then a reward when you decide to try them back in the same room and they cooperate is to teach them a game that they can play together, that they cannot play alone. That's just one, quick example. But I think reteaching is not louder and slower, right? Reteaching is something different. So if you believe that you've taught this 9-year-old well, and you've explained this is appropriate, this is inappropriate, this is sin, this is righteousness, this is good, this is bad, whatever language you're going to use, and you believe you've taught it, you've explained it, you've talked about cause-effect relationship, you've asked him to search his heart and to be intentionally kind, and he's not, then he probably needs a new explanation. That's my gut. Maybe it's a learning style thing. I've written a book about the 8 intelligences, the 8 different ways that we're smart. And that book includes ways of teaching to all 8 parts of the mind. I will be teaching that at conference. And by the way, at the end of this, we're going to give you all a free shipping code so that you can purchase product from our website for a week, and we'll ship it at our expense. And I have written a book about motivation. It does include the change process and how to find rewards and consequences that will work. So of the product line that we have to offer you tonight, and I hope it's not inappropriate for me to say that would be the book that relates most closely to the conversations that we're having here tonight. So Sydney, I hope that makes sense. I would, if you've taught and not told, and he's still not getting it right, then he needs consequences to motivate him to improve his choice to behave. And maybe he needs more information. And maybe he's old enough where you look him in the eye and say, why are you being disobedient? And listen to what he says. Well, she made me is very different from I am lonely, or I am tired, or I am scared, or I am confused. All right, think about that. Well, Cassandra, your comment is very kind. Wow, thank you. That means a lot to me. That really means a lot. It's been a long day. I started out with live radio at 8 o'clock this morning, so that's very kind of you to say that, and I received that tonight as a blessing. So, I love what I do, and I meant what I said as we started this call, that you ladies, looks like we've got all women here, you're my heroes, doing a really hard thing. I think homeschooling is right, and I think it's a challenge whether you have 1 kid or 5 kids or whatever. So praise God that we're here together tonight. I'm glad that the Midwest Parent Educators invited me to do this. So yeah, hey, there's the code that she put up here. So if you all look at that comment, the bonus tonight is free shipping. You can go to celebratekids.com and go to the shopping cart, and through February 20th, or from tonight through the 25th, so that's next Sunday, so through the 25th, you can get anything shipped to you for free if you enter the shipping code MPE. There's a comment box when you are ready to check out of our shopping cart. There's a place where you can comment or enter a code, and just put the 3 letters MPE, and you'll notice that the charge for shipping will disappear. And we would be honored to ship you something that might be a blessing to you tonight. So, but we've got 5 minutes left. If there's anybody else that has a question or an idea, I'll say one thing while you're thinking. I'll watch in case you guys have an idea, but I don't want to end with something that's too complicated, but I feel responsible to say this to you. I mentioned earlier the idea that beliefs cause behaviors. And so whatever the issue is that's been on your mind tonight for change, that you wish your kids wouldn't do this and would do this, I guarantee you, unless they're really little and it's a habit and they haven't formed thought life yet, I believe that it's essential to discover what is the belief that's driving the behavior, or we talk about what's the root that's causing the fruit, all right? And you might be really surprised. Like back in the day, I wanted to work on interrupting. I used to interrupt really well, and I realized it was really inappropriate, and I thought, well, I was just interrupting because I was afraid I'd forget the idea, whatever. And God revealed to me that I interrupted because I thought my ideas were more important than theirs. God revealed to me that I interrupted because I got more attention when I was talking than when I was listening. Telling you the God's honest truth. Now, I also interrupted because I'm an exhorter and I'm a quick thinker. I'm a teacher, and I love to help people solve problems. Those are not sin, but it was still something good being used badly, which is still wrong. And so you have to identify, that's the spider that has to be killed, or the spider web will come back. Does that make sense to you? How many of you have cleaned the windowsill in your kitchen and there's no spider web and you're so excited, and then you wake up the next day and the spider webs are back? Why? Because you never found the spider. The reason I stopped interrupting was I dealt with the fact that I wanted people's attention. The reason I stopped interrupting was that I decided that other people had good ideas that I could learn from. I had to change my beliefs about myself and others in order to change my behavior. So I can almost guarantee you that the children's behavior that irritates you is rooted in beliefs. They may not know they believe. If they're little, they won't be able to verbalize it to you. You'll have to pray it out of them, if you will. And if you read my motivation book, or we have a CD on our website about the change process you might benefit from as well. That might help. Karen, can you give an example of leading a child to explain why they did something? I often get, I don't know, as a response to understand and to get that belief. Yeah, they're talking about. So I don't allow, I don't know. I would ask a question that cannot be answered that way. Or here's what I do. Now, if they're little, this may not work, but my favorite comeback is, you ask a kid a question, it says, I don't know. Say, what do you know? And before you know it, they'll talk to you. So why did you slam the door? I don't know. Well, what do you know? Well, I was angry. Before they know it, they've answered your question because they don't have enough self-control to not do it, okay? So sometimes I don't know, what do you know works. I would also do the broken record. If you're old enough to know, the record would skip, on the machine, and it would be keep repeating itself. So, why did you slam the door? I don't know. Why did you slam the door? I don't know. Why did you slam the door? I told you I don't know. Why did you slam the door? Very calmly, without getting angry, keep asking, which implies they should know. And then then you say to them, all behavior starts with choice, and you need to start realizing that. And then you need to add self-control so that your choices don't win out. Okay? So try that. Again, I can do a whole hour on that, and we've got to wrap up our time. But if you guys are going to be at the convention, I really want to meet you at my booth, and hopefully you'll be in my seminars. And if we can follow through on any of this, or follow me on Facebook, I would be honored to be a part of that. And Sydney, thank you for your last comment. That's really kind and generous of you. So, wow, what a lot to think about, right? Praise God. Thank you guys for your energy. Thanks for trusting me and valuing your children enough that you would want to spend time here on the site. I've enjoyed it, and I'm really grateful that Kansas City Midwest Parent Educators has chosen to bring me to the convention. I look forward to seeing you there. So I'm going to close this out. God bless you all. Thank you.